So we talked last time about interviews, how to conduct interviews. And the questions that can come up then are like, great, once I have that awesome interview, what do I do with everything that comes out of it? So there's a bit of a gap between interviewing someone and having a landing page or email written. So we're not going to talk about the whole gap today because that's like a great big series of tutorials. We are going to talk about the next step after your interview. We're going to talk about what to do with what you get out of that interview. We're also going to talk a little bit about what happens before the interview too, so you can feel really good and kind of bookend that interview. Well, so Nikki, we've known each other for a couple years now, and you were just in my mastermind. You have written emails for us. You just put together a kick-ass funnel for us. We're super stoked about it. We're super stoked about it. And that's going to be going out really soon. So I was like, girl, come in and teach people. So now you're going to teach us some things because you did a bunch of interviews to get our copy written as well as other research. So I'm going to let you take over. Teach us.
Cool. Okay, we'll do that. All right, I'm going to share my screen.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah, let me know if you can see everything. I'm going to go in present mode.
Yes.
Where's that pause? There. Cool. Can you see?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so like Joe said, we are going to go through a little bit of the before and the after of customer interviews. So how to go in and out of a customer interview so you get conversion-worthy responses that you actually use to inform your copy. Because there's nothing worse than doing a whole bunch of interviews and then having nothing to show for it, or having way too much to show for it where you don't even know where to even begin. So we're going to solve that problem. And of course, we use GIFs. So this is a typical before when you're running an interview. Like, oh, hyperventilate much. So we are going to try to stop that. And then this is a typical after. Where is that paper? Yeah, so you could end up, if you run your interview well and you end up with all this data, you're kind of stuck wondering, like, where is that one piece of data that I know would make the most amazing CTA copy? And you can't find it anywhere because you didn't organize. So we are going to solve those two big problems and do awesome copy. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about how I came to my system. So I come from a branding background. I worked for a branding agency. I did branding for as a freelancer for a while. And the thing with branding is that we talk to customers, obviously, but it's a lot of speculation and like thoughts versus concrete reality of what the decision was and what the use cases were and things like that. So when I moved into conversion copywriting, I was kind of stuck with customer interviews because I also was coming from this framework of like the customer is always right and you listen to the customer. And I would kind of just let the customers lead the interviews. And then I was frustrated because I didn't get any good information. Like I didn't get any, like obviously I got some information, but I didn't get the like real emotional voice of customer, like the sticky stuff that you really want to be hearing. So I did a little research and tried to figure out what makes a good messaging interview. And then I ran into the second problem of having too much data that I wasn't using. So, I would take one piece of data and turn it into a headline. But, 7 interviews does not equal out if you just write a headline. So I had to create a system to organize all that data. And that's what I want to teach you now. So there were 2 things that helped me when I was learning customer interviews and that helped me run better interviews. And the first thing was just more of an emotional, stay calm kind of thing, because you're talking to a random stranger and it could get a little scary, was just focusing on on the interview and looking at it as more of a conversation and a dialogue, and the ability to learn about people. Because even though many of us are introverts and it's a little scary to talk to random strangers, like, there's a reason we love copywriting. We love learning about buying decisions and human psychology and all this like good, beautiful stuff. So just focusing on that. And that shifted the focus off of me and how I was feeling. And I'm meeting this random stranger and like, I have to ask good questions and all this like stressful stuff. And it was more like, hey, let me explore. Let me think, like, let me talk to this person and explore and hear their perspective and learn about their experience. So that helped a ton. That's a little fluffier. Here's a more tactical kind of thing. The second thing was that I needed to go in with a goal. So I needed to stop putting the customer in the driver's seat, and I needed to start running the interviews and finding out what I wanted to accomplish and accomplishing it. So I did that with a few things. One thing really that broke down into a few things. So I call them core questions. Before I go into any interview, I identify my core questions. What am I trying to accomplish? And I do that by asking 2 questions. What am I writing? And what is my one reader's stage of awareness? Now, quick recap on stage of awareness. You want to match your customer, your one reader, with where they're at when they first encounter your copy. So they could know they have a problem, but not know that there's a solution for it. They can know there's a solution, but not know that your product is the number one solution for their problem. So there's 5 stages of awareness. And based on where they are, that's where you want to, like, there's certain elements that you want to lead with. You want to, like, for example, talk about the benefits if the customer is shopping around for solutions. So this is not like exactly black and white. You always lead with benefits if you are a solution aware kind of thing. But these are kind of like the framework to put in place. And when you know where your customer is at, where your one reader is at, then you can like put your script together based on what you should be leading with. So you want to ask questions that will inform your lead. So for example, if you want to, if you ask what word would you use to define the product, that can help with identity, which will help your unaware prospect. If you ask what was the tipping point that led you to buy the product, then you are helping to understand what the pains were, which will help your problem-aware prospect. If you ask if the product disappeared, what would you miss the most? Then you are learning the benefits of the product, and that can help your solution-aware prospect. If you ask what ultimately led you to go ahead with the decision to buy product, then you're going to learn some differentiators, which will help your product-aware prospect. And if you ask if there's something, is there something you're trying to accomplish that you can't with product, then you'll learn what they're missing and how you can incentivize them to help your most aware prospects. So obviously this is one question and you're going to be asking a half an hour's worth of questions, but you're using this information to help inform your script.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
I love it. It's awesome. Like, I know a lot of other things will fall out of these questions, but nonetheless, they're still like, it's so good. And I chatted to everybody, screenshot this. So if you go to Mac Command-Shift-3, screenshot that. Yeah, because it's just really helpful. Awesome. Love it.
Cool. And I think that's why organizing data is so important when you said like a lot of other things will fall out of it, because you will find out so much when you ask this question. So you can't just put all this into pain, because then they'll also talk about some other aspect that you then have to put somewhere else. So you're like learning so much, so you have to end up organizing it. Yeah. That was just a thought. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but what happens if you ask yourself these questions and the answer is, I have no idea. And this happens when a client comes to you and says like, hey, we want to write a nurturing funnel. And then you kind of look at their data and their problems they're struggling with, and you see that, no, really, they actually want a sales funnel, and maybe they need to optimize their products, or maybe actually they need to start with the website. Anytime you're doing more strategy for a client, that's when you kind of want to go take a step back and find your core questions with what the amazing Talia Wolf of, Get Uplift calls the 4 helpful lists. So if you ask, you get together with your client in a meeting and say, and like brainstorm, just like fill out this chart with everything and anything of what's right, what's wrong, what's missing, and what's confusing. And that will help you see what you need to be writing and what your prospect's stage of awareness is. And then you could go back to that step of figuring out where your question line is and what you need to be leading with. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think in practice it'll help to actually get into doing the work. But yes, as a concept, totally makes sense. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Always like that. Yeah. So, okay, that was the before. Any questions on the before, or should we move into the after and the organizing?
So there is a question back on the screen. I mentioned that a screenshot. Martha asked about problem and product questions. She said they both look similar. So the problem, what was the tipping point that led you to buy, and what ultimately led you to go ahead with the decision to buy, that those both feel like they're the same question, but they're nuanced. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think that the problem is more talking about what led them to buy, like what in their life was happening before that really led them to start searching for a solution.
Yeah.
Whereas it is a slight differentiator, and I actually would rephrase the tipping point one to talk more like that. And then the product one is more once they're in the throes of decision making, like what really pushed them?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it could be like, what was the tipping point that led you to go looking for X product rather than necessarily to buy? But yeah, but even the buy question could still help uncover things for problem awareness. Yeah.
Right. Because
cool.
you're talking tipping point in life. So it brings up more stuff about life than like what ultimately led you is like when you're in that decision-making process.
Yeah.
And that's like the beauty of a script, is like organizing it according to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Dig it. And Sonia just mentioned also, as she was reading through it, she said in chat, a problem question seems to be about the customer, or you'd at least phrase it like it's about the customer versus the product question being more about the product. So like what about the product ultimately led you to go ahead with the decision to buy versus like what other things. So, okay, cool. I don't want to interrupt this any further, but yeah, awesome. Thank you for clarifying.
Cool. Okay, so let's just go back to cleanup time. Okay, so yeah, we're going to organize all this stuff up. And when you want to know how you organize, who do you ask? Of course, Marie Kondo. And you get to edit a little bit. Nice. Keep only those things that speak to your one reader's heart. And what I found when I was trying to organize was that I would get really attached to like the full transcript, and it would be really hard for me to throw out the pieces that were not important. So I realized like I had to get rid of the stuff that was not helping me, and then I could organize what was helping me. And I'll show you how I do that, obviously. Together. We're going to do it together. So I'm going to show you the sheet, and then we are going to just kind of practice with some examples. Nice. So the picture of the baby is because the client example that I'm giving is a doula, which is also a birth coach, some people call it. It's a professional who gives emotional and physical support to women during childbirth. So I picked this example because childbirth has a lot of pain and it has a lot of emotion. So it's a good transcript to go through. So yeah. Okay, so I was writing a website and my one reader's stage of awareness was solution aware. So that's just to give you some background. And so the core questions that we came up with based on those things was, why do women use doulas, and why do her clients choose her specifically? So those were our core questions that we were trying to accomplish. So if you go not to this link, Sarah will chat out the right link. You can opt in to get the actual worksheet. But before you do that, I'm actually going to walk you through it. So can you see the worksheet?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I just want to let you know that you do not have to frantically write down the steps, because your copy of the worksheet will have directions. So if you watch the walkthrough, then the directions are just kind of like a prompt to remember exactly how to do it. Cool?
Nice. Nice.
Cool. Okay, so the first thing you want to do before you even start interviewing is to open up this tab that says core questions and fill out your core questions. So in this case, we had, why do women use doulas, and why do her clients choose her specifically? And then you go into your interviewee list and you just put in all the people that you invite to the interview. Persona type, by the way, is in case you're interviewing different types of personas. Like, for example, if we wanted to talk to women who did hospital births and women who did home births, we would organize according to persona type. And I like to put in everyone that I interview, that I reach out to, and then under status, I put whether they say no, whether they just don't respond, and the people that I actually interview, the people that cancel, all that kind of stuff, just to have it all in one place. So yeah, you put that in there and you end up filling out this part before your interview. Cool. And then after your interview, I'll sometimes update the status. So like, I'll say like interview done, and then like organization done. Like I end up kind of like going through the stages of like what is done in the status. So then once you run an interview, you make a copy of this tab and you name it the customer's name. And then, and then you fill out this section right over here, initial impressions, right after the interview. Give yourself a buffer in between interviews and just get your thoughts out, just because some of that stuff could be really helpful and useful and interesting. So you want to ask yourself, what's intriguing you the most right now? What's in sync with what you expected? What's different or surprising? What's similar to other interviewees' experiences? What's different than other interviewees' experiences? And obviously these two, you can only ask after you do more than one interview. Impressionable quotes and miscellaneous impressions, catch-all for anything else that's just interesting for you. Nice. So that's what you fill out immediately after the interview. Then once you get your transcript back, and remember, you should not be taking notes, you should be getting a transcript, that's when you start filling out all this stuff. So basically, these are the categories that I find myself using again and again. But sometimes there'll be more or less depending on the interview. Sometimes I end up adding in something extra. So you just want to like put in the categories. And what I like to do is I put in the header of like what the actual motivation was, and then I'll back it up with the quotes. I'll put each of their quotes over here. So as you go through the transcript, you just start pulling the pieces and say, okay, this line is an objection. I'm going to put it in the objection part. And, you know, put the header of like what the objection actually is and actual quote. And you just start filling out like, oh, this piece of data is about her referral source, how she found the doula. This piece of data is about competition, unexpected benefits and detriments, recommendations, like what would she say if she was recommending her to a friend. Anything that's like really emotional and interesting, that goes over there. I have a place for miscellaneous information, interesting use cases. This one is partly because I have a hard time letting go, but partly because it does end up getting useful. But like if someone tells me something that I don't think will resonate with a lot of people, but is just really intriguing, I'll put it in interesting use cases. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not, but yeah, I think it's interesting to keep in the interesting stuff and not lose that in like the big, huge transcript. I'll also put in repeated instances. So if someone will say something like again and again, if they keep mentioning something, then I know that's important. So I'll put it there. And then sticky messaging is anything that is like interesting turns of phrase or ways of explaining things, or just like a really beautiful verbal picture, anything that I think will make for really good copy. That's going to go in there. And then finally, I put in action items. So if anything came up in the interview that needs a follow-up, like getting them in touch with support or realizing that this person would be great to write a testimonial, a problem with an incentive, anything that I actually have to do about whatever came up in the interview, that goes under action items. And then after I do all that, I scroll up to the top and I put tags just for easy sorting. So if I know that there was some random data point about topic X, I could just kind of like scroll through each of the tabs of the customer and find that data point a little more easily. I just want to show you what it looks like when it's all filled out. A lot of data. This is from 1.5 an hour interview. By the way, it takes about like 20 minutes to half an hour to do this for each interviewee. But it saves you so much time, so don't let that stop you. And yeah, it looks really overwhelming, but it's not, because if, let's say, you are writing an FAQ email, like an updated FAQ email, then you just go into objections and, you find the data point that you need. And even more, what I like to do is I like to then make a master list. So if I know that I need to talk about motivations, then I'll just go into every customer's sheet and just copy this whole section and just put it over here. Make a motivations master list. And I always do that for sticky messaging. There's always a master list of sticky messaging because it's just like good language and stuff. But you could do it with any section that you know that you need. So that is the overview, and now we are going to do it ourselves. So, okay, so here is, these transcripts are, this transcript is actually a mosh of a bunch of different transcripts, and it's a pseudonym, like I edited it because I do promise anonymity with the recording, so just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, so this little data point is where she's talking about how she had an epidural with her first baby, and then she hired the doula for her second baby. So she was saying, I would have felt strange having a doula there. Like, why are you hearing this? Like, it was actually a very intimate, beautiful birth. It would have felt weird to have a stranger there because I didn't need the emotional or physical pain support once that epidural kicked in. So what would you pull from this?
Just like, which parts would you pull?
I guess I should do that. And where would you put them?
Oh, good Lord. Anybody have any thoughts on this?
Hint, you could pull more than one thing.
Objection for woman planning an epidural. Objection, would have felt weird. Yeah, just everybody saying objection, would have felt strange. Okay. What are your thoughts, Nikki?
So, yeah, I would have felt strange having a doula there. Like, why are you hearing this? Weird to have a stranger there. That went into objections. And then I also took a very intimate, beautiful birth, because that's an interesting turn of phrase about what the person wants to like visualize her birth as, what she actually wants to experience. So I go into the sheet and put it into objections. So again, I put like the header here of like, oh, it's kind of intrusive to have a stranger in birth. And then I put the quotes here of like, would have felt strange, and that exact language that she uses. And then I go down to sticky messaging, and I put in intimate, beautiful birth.
Nice.
Cool?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we have 2 more examples to practice.
2 more. Okay, cool. And then start loading up any questions you might have for Nikki in the Q&A area, because we'll jump into Q&A right after these 2. Ish.
Cool. Okay, so this one was, so basically this was, she was talking about how in her 9th month, it suddenly hit her that the baby was going to come out, and she was terrified. So she said, I was like almost mentally fighting it tooth and nail. I really, really just wanted to hit undo. I wanted to hit undo. And I kept hoping like, okay, maybe like, I don't know, there's some kind of magical surgery, or like it was very scary for me.
Okay, so go for it, guys. Anything in here, what would you do and where would you put it? Hit undo is sticky messaging.
Anyone else?
Magical surgery. Yeah, others said magical surgery. Most of it's sticky. Yeah, I mean, Yeah, you did highlight a lot. Netta said it's like most of it is. Jody says all of it too.
So yeah, I ended up pulling a lot of this because this was like a really cool insight and this really informed the page a lot. So I put some of this in sticky, but I also put it in heightened emotion because this was like a really interesting piece where she was really like feeling the emotion, the fear.
Yeah,
So
I was thinking that with all the ums and the likes and the clearly like the kind of chaos, what she was saying, like there's something there, right? That feels emotional. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and that's why I like to get, what's it called when you order the transcripts that are like
Where
verbatim.
it includes the spoken pauses and things. Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because they're clues. They're really verbal clues. I also put it in motivations because that was why she wanted a doula, was because she was scared. So yeah. Last one. Have also that like it was interesting. Like I didn't want to be a burden on my husband, almost like in a sense. Like I kind of wonder if he was scared too. Like it's kind of a scary thing to see your wife all of a sudden transform into this crazy woman screaming.
This is hilarious, says one person. I mean, it ends on a very sticky note. It's just, obviously, yeah. So Netta says motivation and sticky for the husband. Motivation, looking for emotional support just beside the husband's, outside of the husband's support alone.
Yeah, so I put it in all those places, and I also put it in unexpected benefits and detriments, because this was something, maybe this wasn't super clear in the beginning, but this was something where she was saying like, oh, you know, it's interesting, and she was kind of reflecting on it. So I also put it in unexpected benefits because she didn't think about it until afterwards.
Fun.
Cool.
Dope. Yeah, it's awesome.
So that is that. Practice makes perfect. You will not be perfect right away, but that's okay. This is part of learning and growing, and you'll be awesome. So just do it.
Sweet.
And then because I know Joe will ask, there's my information.
Nice. And there's also all the information on getting a hold of Nikki on Twitter, watching on YouTube. I think, is that with Sophia? You and Sophia?
Yes. The brilliant Sophia.
Cool. So check
that's
that
called
out.
Selling with Science. Selling
with Science on YouTube. Check that out. Following up with questions she asks in a further email for those who do subscribe. And we've also got Nikki's post on interviewing coming out hopefully this week. So Nikki, thanks for being so badass with interviewing.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And thank you everybody for sticking around and participating so well. And we will see you in our next Tutorial Tuesday. Have a great week, guys. Bye.
It's the 90s.